الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. So we're continuing with our reading of this book by the great Imam, al-Imam Harith al-Muhasibi rahimahullah ta'ala. And for those of you who've been able to join us, you'll recall that this is a book that was written very early on related to Islamic spirituality. And so we're really trying to explore foundational concepts related to spirituality within the Islamic framework. And so the Imam today, we're going to read forward, and he says, use your intellect to worship God by not being obsessed with your plans. Rely on God, that He will ward off from you the harm contained in the divine ordainment. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu said, O son of Adam, do not delight in wealth, and do not be overwhelmed with grief when you are afflicted with poverty. Do not be saddened by tribulations. Do not be overly pleased by easy times. Verily, gold is tested for its purity by fire. Likewise, a righteous servant is tested by tribulations. Okay. So the general theme here is reliance on God, which in Arabic we would say is tawakkul, to trust and rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Imam begins by saying, which is a very interesting saying, he says, use your intellect to worship God by not being obsessed with your plans. I find this really interesting because I would say we tend to do the opposite. We tend to use our intellect to actually obsess over our plans. Do you get what I'm saying? He's saying, no. Use your intellect and focus on worshiping Allah and be so busy with that you don't obsess over your plans. Now, let's try to understand why he would say that. What's the problem with obsessing over your plans? And let's define that too. We want to define obsessing over plans not as planning. Planning is fine. Planning is encouraged in our religion. But we want to define obsessing over one's plans as becoming overly attached to outcomes and results. And what's a sign that we're doing that? When we obsess over the process, almost like if we approach it a certain way, we will be guaranteed a specific result. And if we don't, then we will not get it. And then we're obsessed over the result in the sense that that's the only thing we want. Why do you think we obsess? Why do people obsess over their plans? Any ideas here? What would you guys say? Yeah?
Just limited knowledge of the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Limited knowledge of the wisdom of Allah. Right. Okay. What else? Yeah.
To gain a sense of control.
To gain a sense of control. Beautiful. I love that. You understand that point? To gain a sense of control. Where we feel we are in control of our lives, we're in control of the situations we find ourselves in, and we're in control of the future. Because the future is what? Always. The future is uncertain. How do you gain control over uncertainty? By finding something of certainty that gets you through that. That's your rock. That's your anchor. And so, in a moment, with the future being uncertain, it's almost like we feel if we can just plan enough, we can guarantee the future. Do you understand that? If we plan enough, we can guarantee the future. The Imam says, don't do that. Don't do that. You know, the great Ibn Ata'illah rahimahullah, he says, أرح نفسك من التدبير It's a beautiful saying. أرح نفسك من التدبير. We could translate this as relax. Calm yourself from overly obsessing with your plans. He uses the verb here, the command verb, relax. Arih. Right? Like in Arabic, raha. Raha, which means to be, relaxed. Arih nafsak. Relax yourself when it comes to obsessing over your plans. Why would he use that verb? What does obsessing over plans do to a person? What does it do? Yeah. It causes anxiety. What else? If you're constantly obsessing over plans, it's exhausting, no? Isn't it tiring to always be just constantly looking into every variable? How many variables could you look into in something? It's endless. Endless. He says, no, don't obsess and try to, guarantee a particular outcome. Don't do that, because you're going to tire yourself. How often do we over-prepare? You ever done that? Over-plan something? You were like over-prepared, like you did way too much for the occasion. And you end up, you're like, oh, I didn't even need to know all that. A lot of people do it when they travel. When you travel, you ever like over-prepared for traveling? You looked into like every little thing. You learned about like every street around the hotel you're staying in or the Airbnb. You read every review. Do you know what I'm talking about? How many of y'all do that? And then it's like analysis paralysis. Or like you search every single flight looking for the best price. Right? Because you're constantly getting Expedia.ca ads. Y'all get a lot of Expedia ads? I don't know why, I get a lot of Expedia ads. Right? I'm just like, bro, leave me alone. Like, I don't think I've ever bought from you guys, and why are you guys on my case, So, we search like all the different, and then you have to read the reviews for the flights. Do you get what I mean? How many things are you going to read? How many reviews are you going to read? Review about the airport, the lounge at the airport, right? Review about service on the plane. Review of the washrooms at the airport. How many things are you going to read? And so when we begin to obsess over guaranteeing that my trip goes exactly as planned, if not better, what ends up happening? Number one, we set ourselves up for what? I don't know about failure, but probably disappointment. Do you know what I'm saying? You probably end up disappointed because maybe somebody was biased in those reviews, right? Or maybe you were like super careful. Have you ever done this where you were super careful, so you took the really expensive option, and someone else took a much cheaper option? You're like, you're crazy. Like I don't roll like that. I'm going to be careful. And they had a great time, and you were like, I should have just done that. Because you read like one review of someone who's just, ranting about how they had a bad experience, and you were like, nope, we're not doing that. You know what I'm talking about? Meanwhile, that person was like, whatever, like, we'll figure it out. Like, this is not terrible. The rating seems to be okay. But hey, we'll put up with it. We'll figure it out. How many of y'all are that person? We'll figure it out. Like, not that you don't plan, but you recognize that you can plan all you want. And even that hotel that has the best reviews could let you down. It could happen. Right? So you kind of accept that there's always going to be some uncertainty in the decision you make. So you know what? We're just going to figure it out when the time comes. We're ready for anything. We plan for the best, right? We hope for the best, but we acknowledge that the worst could happen as well. Do you get what I'm saying? So the author is telling us, the Imam is telling us, rest yourself. Do yourself a favor. Do not obsess over the results and outcomes. And we do that, guys. We do that. We obsess over the Imam's also talking about what? He's also not just talking about over preparing, but becoming overly attached to a very particular outcome. This is what he's trying to say here. He's not saying don't plan. He's not saying don't do your due diligence. That was a hard one right there. Don't do your due diligence, right? He's not saying don't do that. He's saying, number one, there has to be a limit. You just can't obsess over everything. Number one, no matter how much you plan, it's not going to guarantee anything. So just acknowledge that. Number two, don't become overly attached to a particular outcome. Meaning, I want this and only this, and nothing else is acceptable. Do you get what I'm saying? What are some times we do that? Give me some examples. What are sometimes people do that? Where they just fixate on this one thing they want, and they say, this is what it has to be. And if it's not this, I don't want it. Yeah.
Choosing a career.
In your career, right. Specifically what? Like a particular company you want to work for? Is that what you're saying?
Trying to get into medical school.
Oh, that resonates with a lot of people here, huh? The MCAT stories? Huh? Yeah. Fixated on that, got to get into this one profession. To be fair, it's usually not even from y'all, right? There's someone else who told you nothing else is acceptable. So, usually that's the reason, yeah. Someone else had their hand up, yeah. Choosing a wife. Absolutely. I was waiting for that, guys. That was actually the one I had in my mind, When we're trying to get married, right? When we're trying to get married, people are like, Shaykh, make dua that person is in my istikhara. I'm like, that's not how the istikhara works. You understand? Like, you want me to appeal on behalf of that person in the I don't even get what you're trying to do here. That's not how that works. Do you understand? Okay, here's the next question. And this could be many, many things in our lives. We become so attached to the outcome and result. And let's be honest, y'all. Let's be honest. We actually get attached to the idea more than the reality. The idea of it more than the reality. Right? More than the reality of it. It's an idea, and we idealize the idea. And it often turns out to be not exactly what we anticipated. We get attached. Okay, here's the question. Why do we do that? Why would we become so fixated on a particular outcome? How does someone avoid? I guess this is more important question. How do we avoid becoming overly attached to a particular outcome? Because naturally you want it, right? Based on your research, based on all the variables that you looked into, that seems to be the best option. Okay, so now you want to pick that option. How do you avoid becoming overly attached to the outcome, number one, and number two, look, why do we want to avoid becoming overly attached, guys? What's the problem with doing that? What does it lead to if it doesn't work out? Massive heartbreak. Like, people can really suffer when they don't get something that they have fixated on for the longest time. It can hurt them very deeply. They can spiral. And I've seen this happen to people. Yeah. I mean, in marriage cases, people start to question their life. Life's not worth it anymore. That's where people have to throw the whole fish in the sea thing back at them, But people start to get really dramatic about it, It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of pain. Okay, so how do we avoid that? How do you avoid becoming overly attached? Sorry? Plan? In the present. What do you mean by that? Can you tell me more?
Instead of planning in the future, you plan the next steps that you can have in the present. What you can do next.
Okay. Yeah, but what you're going to do next is apply to medical school. Or propose for the marriage, and speak to her dad. Now, so that's the next step. So you did it. And how do you avoid, after doing that, becoming attached to the outcome? Besides not texting her so much. I'm just kidding. Yeah, Fawad.
Realizing that you don't know what's best for you.
Subhanallah. Yes, this is a hard one. Guys, admittedly, this is a challenging one. It's when we internalize and accept the fact that we don't know what is best for us. It's hard, isn't it? Because you could have done all of your due diligence, but you still don't know where goodness for you lies. Does that make sense? There's a statement that's attributed to the great companion Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. He says, "Ma ubali ala ayyi halin asbahtu." He says, I really don't mind in whatever state I wake up in the morning. I find myself. He says, "Ala ma uhib aw ala ma akrah." It doesn't really matter to me much. If I wake up and I find myself in a situation that I'm really pleased with, no big deal. And if I find myself in a situation that I'm really upset with, I don't like, it's no big deal. Neither of them bother me too much. He says, why? He says, وَذَلِكَ لِأَنِّي لَا أَدْرِ الْخَيْرَ فِي مَا أُحِبْ أَوْ فِي مَا أَكْرَهُ. He says, because the reality is, I actually don't know if what's good for me lies in what I like or what I dislike. I actually don't know which of the two contains what is good for me. See, what's the conflation we make? We conflate what we like with what is actually good for us. We think, if I like it, it must be good for me. And if I dislike it, it must be terrible for me. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu is making a separation between the two. He's saying, no. It could be very possible that I like something and it's not good for me. And it could be very possible that I dislike something and it's actually good for me. And this is that verse of the Quran. This is the verse of the Quran. You guys know this verse? Yeah. Jazakumullah khair. Perhaps you love something and it's actually not good for you. And perhaps you dislike something, but it's actually good for you. And then what does Allah say? Wallahu ya'lam wa antum la ta'lamun. Allah knows and you don't know. This is what comes immediately after that verse. Allah knows and you don't know. As much as you think you know, as much as I've done my research, there's going to be some area that I'm not sure of. And that's where we have to accept. Now, let's be fair here. Acknowledging the reality that I don't know what is actually best for me or where what is good for me lies, it may not reduce the pain. Do you understand that? You're like, I haven't discovered the cure for heartbreak or something, guys. Do you understand? What I'm trying to say is, but it will help you with perspective on the situation. Because when something happens, what do you say? When something negative happens, let's say you're attached to this idea or you're not attached, but you really want it and it didn't work out. It hurts. And you're trying to make sense of the pain. Ya Allah, why would you do this to me? Isn't that a common question people ask? Ya Allah, like, what did I do? Like, I wanted this thing. I did everything right. I took all the steps. And this didn't work out for me. It's Allah knows. And you don't know. Allah knows and you don't know. That's it. And that's almost like a real divine slap in the face, isn't it? It's like a divine slap in the face. Because we're very what? We're very confident, overly confident in what we think we know. And sometimes we have to be reminded, no, actually you don't know. And we have to internalize that idea. Subhanallah. And that's where we start to learn what it really looks like, tawakkul. Is you put all your effort in. But ultimately, what do you ask for? Ya Allah, I've done the best I could to figure out what I think is best. And I'm about to make a decision, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, I ask that you place goodness in this for me. You see that submission? That's part and parcel of the process of making a decision. You see that? part and parcel of making a decision is to not only do your due diligence, but in the end accept that, Ya Allah, I've done the best I could. And now I'm going to make istikhara. I'm going to ask Allah. Istikhara, guys, is not just for marriage. You understand? Like, that's not the only reason why you make istikhara. You can even make istikhara for the smallest of things. It doesn't have to be a full 2 rak'ahs and everything either. It could be a simple dua. Oh Allah, I ask that you place goodness in this decision I'm about to make. Make a decision. I'm about to buy this. Ya Allah, put khair in it. You know, it's just like a small purchase, right? But Ya Allah, put khair in it. Let goodness come from this. Does that make sense? So, what are you doing in the process? You're saying, I've tied my camel, but Ya Allah, I know that goodness lies in your control. Goodness is not guaranteed through my planning. Because you could tie your camel, it could still escape. You could tie your camel, it could still escape. And so you could do all the planning in the world, and you could get what you want, and it could still be terrible for you. Yeah. It could still be terrible for you. And so we don't ask for what we want. We ask for what's good for us. How many of you have parents who remind you of this? My mother always reminds me of this. Any of y'all have that? Where you make dua for something particular and they're like, just ask for what's good. And when I was younger, it used to frustrate me. Because I'm like, no, I want that. And she'd be like, no. Ask Allah for what's good. I'm like, that's good. Like, it's pretty good to me. You know what I mean? But subhanAllah, that understanding and that acknowledgement, because you know when you're younger, you're really overly confident about things. And so, as you get older, you start to recognize, wow, there's a lot that's not in my control. There's a lot that's not in your control. And in those moments, you have to accept that you cannot guarantee anything. Right? See, in your own life, you might still be deceived into thinking you can guarantee particular results. Why? Because if you want it, you'll just go and do it, right? Do you know where you require a lot of trust in God? When you have kids. Why? Because you could do everything. You could do the best you can for your child, and still what? That child could be misguided. That child could, leave the fold of Islam, God forbid. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. It's possible. It's possible. Absolutely. It's a reality that we accept. And it's not you that you can go do something. It's someone else that's so beloved to you. And so every day you're just making dua. You ever seen parents make dua for their kids? And they make like sincere dua. Ya Allah, protect my children. Protect my child. Right? It's a sincere dua. Because there's an acknowledgement of what? Ya Allah, like, I can do the best I can from my side, but I can't control every variable. I really can't. And ultimately, this child has a mind of their own, a heart of their own. And when they get older in life, they're going to come up with their own ideas. And I won't be able to do anything about it. Ya Allah, I just ask that you take care of that child. It's hard. We've been speaking about the story of Musa alayhi salam on Wednesdays. That, for every parent, is that moment where you put your child in the basket, in the box, put it in the river and say, Ya Allah, I did the best I could. When every parent sends their child to school, that's what they're doing, isn't it? Ya Allah, I tried to bring up my child with the most love, with the most care, with the most well-wishing. I'm sending them out into the world to be around people that I don't know. I hope they care about my child. I hope that they will look out for my child. I hope that they'll be good to my child, polite to my child. And you have to just trust. Who knows if your child sits beside a bully that day or not? We don't know, right? We don't know. And so there are certain situations in life, no matter what you do, you'll just never know. And in those moments, you see how human beings, no matter how hard they try to control variables, they are forced by Allah and Allah's divine plan and His decree to accept that they just can't control it. And Allah says this in the Quran, وَاللَّهُ غَالِبٌ عَلَىٰ أَمْرِهِ. Allah is the one who overpowers. He is overpowering in His command. Meaning what? What He says will happen, will happen. no matter how much we plan, and no matter how many guarantees we try to get from the world, it truly lies in the control of Allah. Does that make sense? Now, the Imam is telling us that أرح نفسك من التدبير. Rest yourself from being obsessed with your plans. Why? فما قام به غيرك عنك لا تقم به لنفسك. Because what someone else has taken responsibility for in your life, don't try to take it from them. What is he talking about? فَمَا قَامَ بِهِ غَيْرُكَ. What someone else with a capital S and a capital E. Meaning what Allah has taken responsibility for in your life, don't try to wrestle with Him in taking over it. And one example of this would be your provisions. Your provisions. Allah is Ar-Razzaq. He has written for everybody a specific amount of provisions they will receive. You can receive it through stealing, or you can receive it through a halal means. You're going to receive it either way. You choose the path. Allah's already guaranteed certain things for us. Guaranteed them. He's taken responsibility, the outcomes and results. When we try to steal that from Allah, Ya Allah, no, I want control over my results and outcomes. Then what happens? What happens when someone takes responsibility for something in our lives and then we try to take over? Yeah, I'll take care of it. They tell you. And then you come along and try and do it. And they're like, I told you I was going to do it. And they feel hurt. Why? Why do they feel hurt? Because when you did what they did, what they were supposed to do, what implicit message did you send? Say it? I can't hear you, sorry.
You're not good enough to do it.
Okay, you're not good enough. That's one, sure. What's another message? Yeah. You don't trust them. I don't trust you're going to do it. I don't trust you're going to do it. So what are we saying to Allah when we try to control the outcomes? What are we saying to Allah? Yeah, Allah, I don't trust that you're going to give me a favorable outcome. I don't trust that the outcome you decide will be what's best and what's good for me. That's implicitly the message we're sending when we try to steal from Allah what He has already taken upon Himself. It's certain things in our lives that we do not have control over. Because when you doubt the provisions, you actually doubt the provider. When you doubt the provisions, you in fact doubt the provider. That's what you're doing. And so we're being taught here, do the best you can in planning. But ultimately do not become attached to the outcomes and results. Do not become attached. And remember that you don't know where goodness lies for you. You don't know that. And the fact that you don't know, and that the one who knows best is calling the shots, should give you the ability to rest yourself. See, we have to understand that whatever happens in the world, as hard as it is for us to wrap our heads around it, it is infused with divine wisdom. Shaykh, I don't get that. How could it be that this, whatever that is, could have wisdom in it? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You don't get it. Wallahu ya'lam wa antum la ta'lamun. Allah already told us. You won't get everything. This may be one of the greatest steps of spiritual maturity you'll accomplish, is to accept the day when, if that day comes, you will see the quality of your life change. You will see the amount of contentment and peace you'll find in your life. When you can accept, I just don't know everything. And the being who controls knows best. And He doesn't even just do things arbitrarily or haphazardly. He does everything with wisdom, with justice, with mercy. Do you see that? The common response to that is what? But Shaykh, I don't get it. I don't see it. Exactly. Yeah, you don't. And there's going to be certain things you will not be able to. And to come to terms with that is incredibly powerful. Because then you can rest yourself and not kind of constantly ask why. Does this make sense? What do you think this depends on? The ability to do that. The ability to say, I don't have the answers, and I'm okay with not having the answers. What does that depend on? Yeah.
Humility.
Humility, sure. Okay, so that's number one, acknowledging that you don't know. Yeah. What else?
To be humble and content.
Humble and content, right? Yeah.
Your knowledge of Allah.
Your, beautiful. Your knowledge of Allah. Do you see Allah as someone who's trustworthy? Do you see Him as someone who will not let you down? These are the questions to ask. Because maybe that's the challenge we're having. We want to trust, but we're struggling to trust Allah. And it'll come back to our knowledge of who Allah is and our awareness of all that He's done for us up until now. That the Allah who brought you this far and made decisions where you didn't get it. You could not imagine how that could work out positively for you. Subhanallah. So often it did. Meaning every time it did, but so often you recognized it. Sometimes maybe you didn't, but it was still good for you. And knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Really. See, I'll give you an example to illustrate this point. Think about, y'all have a crazy friend? You know that friend who's like really, you got to double check everything that they plan and stuff? Like a friend who, if they came to you and said, hey, look, on Saturday, you're coming with me. You're like, where? Don't worry about it. They're like, I made a plan. It's a surprise. You're like, you know that friend where you can't trust that plan? You're like, listen, no. You make a surprise plan? No, I need to know. Like, my life's on the line here. Like, I need to know. Y'all have a friend like that? Because who knows what that plan could be, right? It could be the most wild thing, often based on their history, right? In the past, they've done stuff and you're like, we're not doing that again. You didn't sign me up for that. You signed me up for that? No. And then on the other hand, you have a friend who's like, mashallah, very mature, very reasonable. You know what I'm saying? Very balanced. And they tell you, hey, on Saturday, we're going somewhere. It's a surprise. What do you actually do in that situation? You're like, okay, that's cool. Because you know they're not going to do what? They're not going to do something crazy. You know who they are. You know the kind of person they are. So you can actually trust when they leave you in the dark. Like, I don't know what it is. They told me, like, make sure you bring extra boxers or whatever, extra undergarments. And you're like, that's scary, but you know what? It's you, so I trust you. Right? It sounds crazy. You're in the dark. But you say what? You said it. I know you're not going to do something crazy because I know you. You're not like that. Whereas if this person even told you, you know, make sure you bring all stuff, and you'd still be like, I don't know. I can't bring enough safety, like, Band-Aids with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need like 3 first aid kits with you because that's how usually your plans go. It all depends on how you view the person who's keeping you in the dark, who controls the uncertainty. Right? The uncertainty is controlled by Allah. How do you view Allah? What is your knowledge of Allah? And that's going to dictate how easy it is or how difficult it is for you to trust Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah ta'ala grant us tawfiq to really develop a healthy and meaningful relationship with Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. May He grant us tawfiq to know Him in the most accurate way possible, so that we may trust Him and that we may move forward in our lives acknowledging that we don't know what's best for us, and however things turn out, because they are in the control of Allah, we are content with it. May Allah grant us all of that tawfiq. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Jazakumullah khair to everybody again for coming out. MashaAllah. It's always a really good time, a pleasure to be together like this and talking about these really meaningful, important topics. You know, I appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate your input. It really makes the gathering what it is, inshallah. All right, guys, help yourselves to desserts, inshallah, and we'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.